Get cool stuff for what you were going to do anyway. Drink beer. With Buy Beer, Get Gear from Labatt, you can just snap a photo of your receipt and upload it to the website to rack up points for exclusive merch. Get points for every purchase, whether you're grabbing a pint on draft, a case for a party, or a tall boy at the stadium. Any size, any product, anywhere you buy Labatt. Buy beer, get gear. Sign up now at rewards.labattusa.com.
SPN Radio. Tomorrow's broadcasting stars today. Broadcasting live from the campus of Syracuse University. This is Newhouse Afternoon.
It's 3 o'clock in the SMC studios in Newhouse at Syracuse, and it's time for Newhouse Afternoon. Ruff Govett and Cuse Athletics in the past week. Joseph Duffy and Hunter Caparelli on hand.
How you doing, Joe? I just wanted to ask, after this rough weekend for Syracuse Athletics, how are you mentally, physically? Are we doing all right?
It's been a rough watch, just to say. Yeah. It's hard to watch as we'll get into lacrosse later on, being a number one team, and that already been stripped away from Cuse fans in Central New York.
Only a week. Only a week on top of the polls, and then.
Can Syracuse fans have anything nice this athletic calendar? Just anything nice?
It's a great question. I'm not sure. After this past weekend with men's basketball, women's basketball, men's lacrosse, women's lacrosse all taking losses, it makes you think. I'm not saying Syracuse is cursed, but you have between the worst winter in 50 years and then a weekend like this, it makes you start to think that there is some sort of curse laying over the 315.
It sort of feels like that way sometimes. We'll dive into Syracuse men's basketball to start off the show, recently losing to North Carolina, the second time they played them this year. This past Saturday, losing 76-64 at the JMA Wireless Dome, dropping to 15-13 overall, 6-9 in the ACC. I want to start with the good here, though. That crowd, I got to say, the JMA Wireless Dome, we talked about this 2 weeks ago, about how this crowd is so loyal and continues to come back for their Syracuse Orange amidst all the struggles and, the angst of not making the NCAA tournament now for probably a fifth straight year. But this was the best crowd in the nation this year with 23,606 people.
The Dome was packed out. I would say I was there reporting for it. I think it was a mix of 65% Syracuse, 35% UNC. Carolina fans travel well. We mentioned this on the show last week with UNC women's lacrosse playing in the Dome, the number one women's lacrosse team in the country. They traveled well for that game, and Carolina fans traveled well for this game. But 23,000 people, the largest attendance in a basketball game this year. Obviously, you have to factor in the fact that it's in a football stadium, a basketball game in a football stadium. So you factor in that fact. But the fact there were 23,000 people in the Dome for that game, I was stunned. It was packed.
I'd have to agree. Hardly any empty seats. You saw some jersey retirements at halftime as well. I want to mention as well, if you want to call in for a question, had our first call in last week. Call the number 315-437-7644. Again, that's 315-437-7644. It was a great crowd cheering on the Syracuse Orange. A really good road travel by the North Carolina Tar Heels fan base, by the way, as well. But diving into this game, more of the same, unfortunately, for the Syracuse Orange. Looked very lifeless, especially in the last few minutes of that second half.
More of the same. I will say, wearing this shirt, the Carolina blue, is strictly a coincidence. I was live on our Syracuse Mornings on the Hill morning show this morning, anchoring sports, talking about the game, and I just happened to wear a blue shirt to go live on air this morning. So I'm not wearing this because UNC won the game. This is strictly a coincidence. But the word I said this morning when talking about the game was debilitating. That was the one word that came to mind with this loss. Going into it, Carolina had just dropped a game to NC State by 24 points. That was without Caleb Wilson and Henry Vassar, their top two players. Caleb Wilson was still out for this game for UNC, so they were without their top freshman. Henry Vassar was a game-time decision, did play in the game and led the way for Carolina with 19 points. But just the fact that Carolina hadn't been a great team on the road in ACC play this year in general with Caleb Wilson, the fact that they were without him on the road And the way Syracuse lost, especially in that second half, being tied 44-44, 12 minutes to go, and then just letting Carolina go on an 8-0 run. From that point on, UNC was able to score every which way they wanted. Their field goal percentage was just above 60% in the second half. So the Syracuse defense just seemed lifeless in that second half specifically, which it sucks because that game essentially was a make or break to get into the NCAA tournament with an at-large bid. After that loss, you're strictly looking at whether if Syracuse could win the ACC tournament or not. If they don't win the ACC tournament, they won't be getting into the tournament this year.
Joseph Duffy and Hunter Caparelli on Newhouse Afternoon. Syracuse's J.J. Starling had 22 points to lead Syracuse scores. Yeah, season high. The next highest score for Syracuse was Tyler Betsy with 10. The team shot 42% from the field and did look lifeless, as you were talking about, in that second half. And it's hard to think that they could have had a chance possibly to improve a tournament resume. It doesn't mean that if they won this game that they would have been a surefire NCAA tournament team. But you saw last week and how they got blown out by 37, the worst loss in the Adrian Autry era against Duke at Cameron Indoor Stadium. Then they lose to their rival a few days later in North Carolina. But the quote that really caught my eye from Adrian Autry a few days ago was when he was being interviewed by Pauline Stephen-Fonte about, what do you do when you face a deficit like that, a team that goes on a second-half run like Duke did last week? And he just said, nothing.
Right.
You can do nothing. And Syracuse fans right there, that's what they don't want to hear. Because you can do something to lessen the deficit. That doesn't mean that, you have to really necessarily win the game, because Duke has way better talent, way better athletes than Syracuse has right now. Their position is in a way better, their program is in a better position than it was for Syracuse in the last 5-6 years, really, and really in the last decade. But you can't say you can't do anything about that, because losing by 37 is inexcusable, especially the fashion they did. Defense became Swiss cheese against Duke in the second half. The same you could say for North Carolina.
Yeah, just after that 37-point loss, as a fan, you would have thought that Syracuse would have came out with more fire against Carolina. They got embarrassed in Cameron Indoor, embarrassed. And you would have thought after that loss, they would have came out with something to prove. Essentially, we've mentioned on this show, playing with house money, playing like there's nothing to lose, because there isn't nothing to lose. Obviously, the players hear everything about what people are saying about their coach around them on social media. They know there's nothing to lose, and it didn't really seem like they played like that on Saturday. I want to jump into Donnie Freeman specifically, their top scorer. He went scoreless in the first half, ended with 9 points, 3 for 8 shooting. It seemed like he just didn't seem as motivated to win that game against Carolina, which really would have helped their resume, would have helped their coach potentially even save his job for next year. And I saw a similar quote from Adrian Autry, basically acknowledging that this is likely his last season with Syracuse, and it sucks how this season has gone. He knows how this season has transpired, how it's gone along, especially the past couple of weeks. It sucks for the program. It sucks for Coach Autry, and there's 3 games left before tournament play. Maybe they could create a spark and get some magic going in the ACC tournament, but other than that, it seems like this season really might be over for them.
The Orange will play at Wake Forest on February 28th at 5:45. Wake Forest not too much different from Syracuse this year, 14-13 overall and 13th in the ACC. Their head coach, Steve Forbes, again announced that he'll be back next year for the program, the Demon Deacons. This team is still in the top 15 field, as you were talking about, in the ACC tournament, rather. So they'll be able to compete, and if they go on a run, who knows?
Right.
I've seen crazier with NC State in the past. We've talked about this before. They have to go on a run and get hot because, like Adrian Autry was saying, that's their only chance at this point.
It's their only chance. They are going to be in the ACC tournament. They've clinched that far. And this game on Saturday against Wake Forest, you definitely want to be able to guard Juke Harris. He's averaging over 21 points a game for Wake Forest. He's their top scorer. So you're definitely going to want to maybe show different defensive alignments at him. Obviously, there's a lot of great guards in the ACC. When they beat SMU and Cal, they had great guards in Boopy Miller for SMU and Day-Day Ames with Cal. So Syracuse has shown they can potentially lock down down opponents' top point guards or top guards. So they're going to need to do that when they go into Wake Forest on Saturday.
Drew Carey's third in scoring in the ACC with 21.1 points a game. They'll have to find a way to get past him if they want to defeat the Demon Deacons. Not just over yet for the Syracuse Orange yet, but we'll see what they can do in these last few contests and the conference schedule. Yeah. Moving on to Syracuse women's basketball, recently losing 82-69, dropping to 21-6, 11-5 in the ACC. And it's official now that this team, after another dreadful start in the first quarter against NC State, as they were down 24-16, they've lost to every team in front of them now in the ACC standings.
I think the theme that has begun to circulate with this women's team is they've been able to beat the teams that they're supposed to beat, but they haven't been able to beat the teams that they're not expected to beat. And that's been the problem with them. They're now 1-5 in quad one games. They only have one quad win that's on the road at Virginia. So they've done good enough where you're beating the teams that you're expected to defeat. All right. So Coach Jack has gone far enough where she's been able to get her girls to be able to be talented enough to beat the teams they're supposed to beat. But they got to get something going these last couple of games before the ACC tournament and March Madness play if they want to potentially get to that second weekend.
Joseph Duffy and Hunter Caparelli on Newhouse afternoon. You look at this schedule that Syracuse has had just recently, and Clemson just beat number 12 Duke. I don't know if you saw that, who's the best team in the ACC, and Syracuse beat Clemson in a real good nail-biting win just this past Sunday. So that Clemson win is looking much better.
It's looking great. I think the scoring balance is essential for this women's team between Uche Azoje, Layla Filia, Dominique Darius, and Sophie Burrows. You have four girls who could put up 20-plus points in any given night. So I think you need to have at least 2 or 3 out of the 4 of them scoring at least 15, 20 points to beat a Louisville, a North Carolina, a NC State, which happened this past Saturday. You saw a little bit here and there, but there just wasn't enough scoring. And then giving up 82 points against this past weekend against NC State, that was the first time giving up 80-plus points since their loss against Louisville. So it's definitely a balance between being able to lock down defensively, but then also getting scoring from your top 4 players.
Camille Pierre for NC State led Wolfpack scorers with 25 points. She shot efficiently of 10 of 15 from the field and also had 15 boards. Uche Azoje had 27 points in the overtime loss against North Carolina in Chapel Hill just a few weeks ago. In this loss in NC State, she had 26 points and 14 rebounds.
Uche's been great.
Yeah, she's been really good so far. And this goes back to the point that you were talking about. Is Layla Filia consistent or inconsistent?
Yeah.
This past game, 11 points, 3 of 10 from the field.
Right. I think that would classify that as inconsistent. She's had games where we've seen her score close to 40 points, and games like this where she just got over that 10-point hump. You need more scoring from one of your top guards. The fact that Syracuse led in this game 14-13 early in the first quarter, the Orange then went scoreless for 5+ minutes. NC State went on an 18-0 run to go up 31-13, which practically after that, the game was practically over. You're trying to come back down from 18+ points. It's tough, especially in a road, hostile environment like NC State. You need scoring. You need to get buckets in that time period. You can't go 5+ minutes without getting a single bucket.
And you go back to what I was saying in the beginning. You can't have these slow starts, especially down the stretch. It doesn't bode well during tournament season in the ACC or the NCAA tournament. Again, they were down 24-16 after one quarter. Not the worst thing in the world, but you think about the Louisville game that was at the JMA Wireless Dome a few weeks ago, 28-6 after one quarter inside the Dome. That was against a Louisville team that was number 6 in the nation at the time, the best defense in the ACC along with Clemson. You knew that Louisville could play really good defense, but the slow starts have been killers for Coach Felicia Leggett Jack's team so far.
For a team that has shown they can score, it's strange that they've had these weird spurts of going 4 or 5+ minutes without getting a single point. It believes that they have offense there. They have set plays. You see them. They move off ball. They set screens. Filia, Darius, they could get going, whether it's the mid-range jumper, getting to the hoop. They've shown that they could do it, and they just get these weird spurts where they seem to not be able to get to the basket, or they start relying on the 3 too heavily, and then that's what results in going 4 or 5+ minutes without getting a single point.
We'll see what they can do coming up as they'll play against Notre Dame at Notre Dame this Thursday at 7 p.m. against Hannah Hidalgo, one of the best players in women's college basketball, averaging 25 points a game for the Fighting Irish.
Hidalgo's really good. Even though Notre Dame hasn't had the season they particularly wanted, potentially. I think they were in the top 10, I think, preseason, and now they've been unranked the past couple weeks. But either way, Hannah Hidalgo's been everything fans have expected. She's going to be a top draft pick in the WNBA. She's going to end up being a top player in the WNBA. So like how the men are going to have to lock down Juke Harris on Saturday when they play Wake Forest, the women are going to have to try to lock down Hannah Hidalgo on Thursday against Notre Dame.
Orange women's basketball sitting at 4th in the ACC, Notre Dame at 8th. As you were saying, you expected a little bit better from Notre Dame this year in the ACC schedule, but a lot of great scorers that both basketball programs are going to have to go against, in Juke Harris and also Hannah Hidalgo. It's 3:14 the dot. We'll be right back on New House Afternoon to talk about a little bit of men's and women's lacrosse with Robert Shabilsky. We'll be right back on New House Afternoon.
Still streaming live on Twitch and YouTube.
Again, if you want to call, 315-437-7644.
A lot to talk about, Rob.
Yep. I mean, nothing that Cuse fans can enjoy this athletic calendar. Hopefully they can bring it back with this schedule coming up.
0-4. 2 basketball teams and 2 lacrosse teams.
We good still, right?
How'd the men let that one slip away?
Uncostly, big, uncharacteristic turnovers there. Hunter Caparelli, not good.
No, they were winning. They were winning faceoffs down the stretch.
Harvard made it pretty even. That's my guy right there.
How about that?
Are we good? Well, I appreciate that, brother. Thank you. You're Dan. This is Dan, I think. David.
I got a question in the Twitch chat. What do you guys think about Iowa basketball? We're talking about men's Iowa or women's Iowa?
Say it again. What was the
We
question?
got a question in the chat. What do you guys think about Iowa basketball?
Well, I think they're in good hands of their new head coach, who is a proven winner at the D2 level. Forgetting his name right now, but he's such a good, reliable coach, always with that dress shirt and tie on.
Brought over Bennett Sturts.
Yeah, hopefully that they can.
Pretty good.
I think he can bring that program like really good again, because Fran McCaffrey, it was a bad ending for that program towards his last 2 years.
Stalled.
Yeah, it kind of stalled. I think he has Iowa well on their way. They're on a good path to get up. It doesn't mean that they'll be at a national, title contending team like, Iowa State in the same state, but, I think they're well on the way to get at that level, because that guy is one heck of a coach.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Let me look up his name. I'm forgetting his name right now.
Showing it was the coach from Drake, I believe.
Yep, Drake. Why am I forgetting? Yeah, Ben McCollum. I'm forgetting his name, but
he was asking about Ben.
he's a really good head coach. Good attention to detail. His teams always have solid defense, and he saw what he did in the tournament last year with his Drake basketball squad. This team can win at every level. He's won at every level, and I don't think it'll change with Iowa, but it takes time.
We were watching. They had that great win at home against Nebraska.
Yep.
They beat them by 5 points, and they stormed the court. That was pretty cool.
Nebraska is an interesting case study.
Somehow
the
top 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, they dropped Strange James here and there.
Yeah. Somehow the only team in Power 4 right now in college basketball history that doesn't have a single tournament win.
That's a storyline.
Yeah.
That's a story.
Gonna watch out for that in the round of 64.
You got to think this is the year for them to at least get one win.
Yeah, you got to think, because
they'll be at least a top 4 seed. They'll be playing a 13, 14 seed. How can you not at least get one win this year?
Exactly. Hopefully the mayor has them well in position. Fred Hoiberg has done such a good job with the Cornhuskers this season. Former Iowa State guard and also head coach, has some good teams in the mid to late 2010s.
I'm excited for March Madness.
It should be a fun one. It's going to be an all-time tournament, I think.
I think it's going to be all the time.
I know our guy Tommy Armstrong is looking at Ken Palm right now or something about this tournament. He's locked in on the side. He's ready for this tournament.
We got some big college basketball fans in our BDJ graduate program. I know there's a lot of big college basketball fans nationwide who are expecting some fireworks this year in March.
It's awesome seeing the difference coming up to the Northeast because college football in general is like a religion in the South, as you know, Hunter, being that you went to Chapel Hill in North Carolina, but especially where I'm from in Texas, college football and football in general is like king. So seeing people have college basketball at the top of their priorities has been a welcome sight. It's a difference that I wasn't used to, even though I've followed college basketball my entire life.
Yeah.
But it's cool to see.
It is very cool to see. I've always been a big college basketball guy. So.
7.7 and 100.1. Watch live on QSportsTalk.com. Tomorrow's broadcasting stars today. Broadcasting live from the campus of Syracuse University. This is Newhouse Afternoon.
And we're back on Newhouse Afternoon inside the SMC studios in Syracuse. Joseph Duffy with Hunter Caparelli, and our guest analyst is back in Robert Shabilsky to talk about a little men's and women's lacrosse. Rob, welcome back.
Pumped to be here.
It just sucks that, Cuse fans, as I was saying, can't have anything nice. Men's lacrosse, as we start this topic with. You saw them beat a good team in Maryland, the Dome, and 10,000 people showing up in droves to watch some lacrosse in Syracuse, New York. And then this team just lost 13-12 to the Harvard Crimson. Harvard's first win over a number one team in program history. Personally, what did you see wrong, man?
It was really similar to that regular season game from a year ago in the Dome that saw Harvard upset Syracuse in the regular season. And I don't know if you guys were following Syracuse in the NCAA lacrosse tournament last year, but Harvard almost upset the Cuse in the Dome in the tournament in the first round, and they went on a huge run in that second half, and Harvard had some costly penalties there that allowed Syracuse to get back in it. And, Johnny Mullins had a great day, and Owen Hiltz did as well. But a lot of those same things we saw on Saturday in Cambridge, and it's obviously upsetting, right? You're number one team in the country for all of a week. I know Coach Gade and Joey and a bunch of the players like, the ranking doesn't really matter. We're just focused on May, and I think this was the ultimate trap game for them, right? You beat Maryland, you beat the number one team in the country, you're feeling good, you get on the road to Cambridge, and you lose by a goal. It's tough way to start this the 6-game road trip for the Orange.
Tough way, definitely. They had a 12-10 lead, 6 minutes left in the fourth. Harvard then scored the last 3 goals. That game-winning goal with 50 seconds left. I mentioned to you while we were off air, it seemed like Syracuse was able to not dominate the face-off game, but they were controlling it somewhat so.
Harvard made it pretty even down the stretch, and so did Maryland, right, in the second half of that game a week ago. But it's tough, right? Syracuse up 4-1 after the first quarter. They go scoreless in the second. Harvard goes into the locker room with a 6-4 lead at halftime. And, again, it's a back-and-forth affair in that second half, and it's really just finding a way. I think you're really happy with the production out of Michael Leo there. 4 assists on the day. I think it's awesome that he was able to create for others around him. Luke Roa, who's a player I've been looking to step up and kind of get his footing, had 3 goals on the day. He's absolutely stretching that defense from distance. Unbelievable day, 3 goals from him. Joey had 2 and 1. I think it's not fair to say, Joey's got to have 4, 5, 6 points every game for them to have success. You need those complementary players around him, which we saw. And Joey kind of forcing the issue a little bit at the end of the game, gets to the inside and a little S-dodge there to get to the goal, and unfortunately just shoots it low and goes in the goalie stick, and Harvard able to run the clock out.
That second quarter seemed to be decisive.
You can't go scoreless.
Yeah.
You can't go scoreless in a quarter, and that's a tough thing to come back from. And Coach Gate was saying after the game, this is why we're playing a 6-game road trip here. We want to get out in the elements in February and play teams and get on the road, and we want to play good teams. We want to test ourselves because ultimately, right, this is going to help us down the stretch for them to accomplish their ultimate goal.
Cuse drops from 1 to number 7 in the Inside Lacrosse Media poll, and I was just about to mention that because there's such high standards for Joey Spallina that even a game like this is considered quieter, even though a lot of guys will kill to do what he just did against Harvard. Does this 2-week run have you worried at all? I know you were saying that, this team can bounce back and they're capable, but we've seen this before in college football. I'll bring an example of Alabama, knocking off Georgia and Bryant-Denny Stadium to be a number 1 team, and then the next week losing to Vanderbilt. Now, I'm not saying Harvard is the Vanderbilt of that period that happened 2 years ago, but seeing how quick this team can go from week to week, does that worry you at all?
I don't really think so. I think they lose a game by 1. It's a 1-goal loss. Harvard's a good team. They're in the top 15 in the media poll a week ago for the reason they obviously jumped up because they beat the then number 1 Syracuse team. But the media poll is so wishy-washy when you look at it, right? I mean, I think there's been 8 teams now that have received number 1 votes. And someone on Twitter asked, how do people vote in the media poll? How does this work? Are they going off of the results of the past week? Are we looking at the body of the work? Are we going off of our preseason expectations or what teams accomplished last year, the projections of this team? And really everybody votes differently, and not everybody is transparent with how they vote. Kevin Bolliard from TLN, he actually posted, he was the lone Syracuse number 1 vote this week. He said, I voted for Syracuse. I think they lose a game on the road to a top 15 team. I'm not going to fault them for that. I don't know what other teams, have the resume to warrant being number 1. I know UNC is ranked number 1 in the Inside Lacrosse media poll. Notre Dame's number 1 in the coaches poll, I believe. So it's tough, right? But I think, we got a big opportunity here on Friday for them to bounce back at Princeton. Princeton just went on the road to College Park and beat a Maryland team.
Yep.
So Maryland's now 1-2. Princeton had a really, frankly, just disgusting loss to Penn State at home to open the season. We don't know what's going on with Penn State. Princeton bounces back against Maryland. So this Friday game's a big deal. They play on Friday against Princeton. Then they'll play Sunday against UPenn. And UNC will be up in Jersey and Pennsylvania this weekend. They'll do that ACC Ivy League Challenge where Carolina will play UPenn on Friday and they'll play Princeton on Sunday.
This start of the year is why so many coaches don't like these preseason polls, because as you were saying, it's all around teams with not the stars they envisioned, like a Maryland team that lost in the Dome, but also just lost to Princeton, and now Syracuse with the win over Maryland. Now they just lose to Harvard, a respectable Harvard team. They're not, some bummy team by any means, but it just goes to show why these preseason polls could be a little off to look at. So.
Yeah, and I mean, the competition this year is pretty wide open as far as there's a lot of teams that are good. There's a smaller number of teams that have really elevated themselves to that cream of the crop, top 5, 6, 7 teams. And it's really starting to balance out and shake out, okay, who are real contenders, who has a chance at this thing deep into May. And I think as we start to wrap up non-con play in the next few weeks and get into conference play, we'll see more of that. But going into week 4, this is only Syracuse's, 4th game of the year? Can't be too upset about a 1-goal loss. Just got to turn the page and learn from it, right? And I know that's probably what Coach Gates telling his squad is, hey, you know what? We lose this game, that's okay. We're turning the page to Princeton, and we're going to get ready and prepare for a two-game trip this weekend. So
obviously, this was the most goals they've allowed so far this season. Would you place that more on the play of Jimmy McCool or just the defense as a whole? Or a mix of both?
I think it's a mix of both, right? I think there was a couple that Jimmy's probably going to want back. I think the Harvard goal he played out of his mind. Graham Stevens had a great game, had a lot of big saves when they needed him, and he played that way in the regular season game, and it's tough, right? I think playing outside is definitely maybe a mixture of it. I know we don't want to be like, Syracuse can't win outside.
It's a big thing for Cuse haters. This team is an indoor lacrosse squad.
Right? Well, it definitely wasn't sunny and 70 on Saturday up in Harvard. It just wasn't. But I mean, that's why you play these teams. You play outside, and you have to embrace those challenges, and it's only going to help them get better. So.
Joseph Duffy with Hunter Caparelli and guest analyst Robert Shabilsky to talk about lacrosse. Looking ahead at this Princeton game, as you were hinting at, who are some players to watch for the Tigers who Syracuse can be wary of? And does Joey Spallina need to have a bounce-back performance? It was a quieter performance for his standards, but does he have to have a bounce-back performance for this team to get past the Tigers?
I mean, if he could put up 4-4 like he did in Hempstead last year, I think people would be pumped. I don't think we'll see 8 points out of him on Friday night. But, no, I mean, this Princeton team, they return a lot of guys from last year. I think the biggest loss for them is Coulter Mackesy, who was their stretch shooter on attack, and was really the heart and soul of that team as far as offense went. But they got Nate Cabreri. They have Peter Bonomo, who's been stepping up big, and It's a good offense. It's a good defense. They're solid all around. And Ryan Croddick's unbelievable in cage, the Princeton goalie. So another test for them in cage this week. And, hopefully Syracuse is able to light it up and get some points on the board. But I think they will want to approach this Princeton game very similar to how Princeton approached their Maryland game after they lost to Penn State, how they're going to be a little upset. They're going to be hungry to get back in the win column. And they're not going to want to lose 2 in a row. So
fans obviously love to overreact. Is this still a championship caliber team even after this loss?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think if they were the number 1 team in the country this week, I think people might be surprised of, people are shocked they got a number 1 vote. I'm really not. I think that, for me, UNC being the number 1 team in the Inside Lacrosse poll, I mean, they beat the Hopkins team. I know a lot of us I personally was down on Hopkins. They haven't really proved anything yet. And UNC's number 1 team. They haven't left home yet. They squeaked out a win over Jacksonville for their first game of the season. So it's so up in the air right now, but I think Syracuse still has all the pieces they need to be successful, and it's just going to stay the course here and keep getting better. And big week on deck here, and if they lose one or both of those games, maybe that's a different conversation next Tuesday. But I think right now you lose to Harvard, you have an opportunity to right the ship a little bit here against Princeton and Penn, and just going to stay the course.
All right, Q's in the ACC Ivy Challenge will go against the top 10 Princeton Tigers this Friday at 4 p.m. It'll be on ESPN+. Let's transition to women's lacrosse now, and Reggie Thorpe's gauntlet of a start of a schedule and his Syracuse women's lacrosse career continued as they lost to number 2 Stanford over the weekend. And look, this is a good Stanford team, but I'm not going to lie, the defense of this women's team has really stunned me. When you look at how they played against these top teams to start off the year, of course, no wins, but you have to be encouraged by this defensive effort thus far.
Absolutely. I mean, they really dug their heels in there against Stanford, and there's a lot of opportunities for them to get ahead and to get win number 1 in the Reggie Thorpe era. And unfortunately, just not able to squeak it out there. They have the chance to do that today against Loyola. But I think there were a lot of positives, and ball started to move a little better. I still think I'm seeing a little too much of the ISO dodge of girls just creating for themselves and a lack of getting other people involved. I mean, there's times, watching the film on Friday, I got to watch the game, and, there's girls with their sticks up waiting to get the pass to shoot with no one in front of them. They're naked on the backside, and they're just not getting the ball. They're not passing it to them. So I think that's got to be really frustrating as a fan to see opportunities for offensive layups. I know as a player on the field, you got to be frustrated not getting the ball in your stick there. But it was good showing. Molly Guzik had 2 goals, Caroline Trinkus as well. Danny Guyette had another great day. So we'll see. Big one today against Loyola. Loyola's been a favorite in the Patriot League for a long time. They're always strong in their conference play, and obviously Syracuse is a little bit of a different challenge. They played at Loyola last year, so big opportunity for them today to hopefully get Coach Thorpe for win number 1.
Caroline Trinkus had tied the game at 6-6 with 10 minutes left. They were also in it very close with UNC a week before that. So they've shown they can hang around with these top teams. Why do you think that they've kind of lost momentum in those late stages of games when it's been close and then they kind of just need that extra oomph to get over the hump?
You just got to keep your foot on the gas and keep putting goals on the board, right? I mean, the men's team, they go a quarter scoreless, they lose that game. I mean, You can't go stretches without scoring or without getting offensive production or getting good looks at cage. And there were a couple ones where they're on the 8-meter free position and whistle it past the cage. Like, those are going to be ones you want back. You gotta capitalize on those 8-meter opportunities. But I think they got all the pieces. Reggie Thorpe has had a ton of success. His Florida team went to the Final Four last year. So stay in the course, getting everybody involved, really spreading out the ball, and getting everybody involved on the offense, that everybody eats mentality, and just sticking to the game plan and buying in. I know Coach Thorpe's a big fan of the girls he has on his squad, and they're building a great culture there. So just have to stay the course, and hopefully today they get a big win. And if you don't got anything going on this afternoon, make a trip to the Dome and see the game in person. They need your support there. So
hopefully this offense can wake up for Syracuse, because the defense has really stunned me. You saw it against North Carolina, almost finding a way to get past the reigning NCAA champion. Couldn't get past Stanford on the West Coast, but they'll have a chance to get their first win of the year against Loyola at 5 p.m. on the ACC Network Extra. That'll do it for our lacrosse segment here. Robert Shabilsky, thank you for joining us as always.
Thank you, Joseph Duffy. Thank you, Hunter
Love your
Caparelli.
insight, Rob.
It's
Pumped to be back.
3:33 on U.S. Afternoon. When we come back, we'll talk about the U.S. men's and women's hockey teams that won gold in Milano Cortina. We'll be right back on U.S. Afternoon.
Awesome.
Thank you, guys.
Still streaming live on Twitch and YouTube.
Good. Happy.
That was great, dude. That was great.
Awesome.
While we're here still streaming live, we got another question. Who's your take to win the tourney? We have a men's tourney.
Men's
prediction.
tourney, or are you talking about lacrosse?
No, men's tourney.
I'm hoping that this comes true, and I could get kicked off here for saying this, but I'm a big Rick Pitino guy.
Oh, God.
And I would like St. John's.
I'm a big Rick Pitino fan as well. I don't know if they have the talent this year.
They're hot, though. They're hot right now.
Hot.
My goodness.
They have a big game tomorrow night against UConn.
Yep, another game against UConn, one of their biggest rivals. Yeah. I know it's not something that Q's fans want to hear, being that they're former Big East rivals, but something about Rick Pitino, man. I think this is the year that he can get right back on top. You could say Michigan as well, Duke. What a game that was this past weekend, by the way.
What a game.
Oh,
Duke,
man.
Michigan.
We need to see that more. Neutral site games in February, which we never see, by the way, ahead of the tournament. You know, it's really cool.
March Madness type of atmosphere. You get a non-conference game right in the middle of conference play, neutral site, number 1 versus number 3 team in the country, and a very much of like a Final Four March Madness feel.
It was awesome. I mean, that was awesome. 2 great coaches in John Shire and Dusty May. Say what you want about Dusty May, but he can coach.
He can coach.
And you've seen how his Michigan Wolverines have really resurrected, because the Juwan Howard era, you know, it just was not that standard that had been built in the Beeline era. And so you see how he's coached this team so far this year. One of the best starts in Big Ten history. I believe the best start in Michigan history to start off the year. Stumbling against Michigan, against Duke, excuse me. But, you know, that was a really good game. Could have gone either team's way.
I think you hope for a program like Syracuse to see the same type of turnaround that Michigan has had by hiring Dusty May. They brought Juwan Howard in, who is part of the Michigan family, per se. Had played on the Fab 5 team and was very much close to the program, but didn't see that much success. They went outward then and brought in Dusty May, who had success with FAU, had gone to a Final Four, and all he's done there since he's arrived at Michigan is win. And this year, they had that loss against Duke, but I don't see why they can't beat any team in the tournament. If I had to pick a favorite right now, and honestly, even after that loss, I'd still probably go with Michigan.
I think they're a good contender for sure. And Dusty May, again, this is a guy who took Florida Atlantic, the Owls, to the Final Four just a few years ago. How crazy that Final Four was with a UConn, FAU, San Diego State. It was just a nuts March Madness that we saw. You know, 2 mid-major teams go to the Final Four. And going back to that question that was being asked in Twitch, this feels like a very wide-open tournament. You can see a lot of teams win the big chip from Duke, Michigan. Who knows, another team could get hot in conference play.
Arizona's been really good.
Arizona, for sure. And then Kansas, a team that can have a bad stinker that they had a few weeks ago, but also can play like they did last night on Big Monday. And this Bill Self streak of Big Monday games at Allen Fieldhouse continued.
Yeah, I mean, we could get into it a little bit either on today's show or next week, but the Darren Peterson situation has just been insane, and you haven't seen anything like it. A guy who's projected to go number 1 in the NBA draft this coming June, and it seems like between his own camp and the coaching staff have been kind of conflicted on how many minutes they want him to play. At first, it was thought to be injuries, that he'd gotten injured and they were ramping him back up. Now it just seems like it seems to be a strictly minutes restriction, that his camp doesn't want him to get injured and jeopardize potentially getting drafted number 1 overall. So very interesting situation going on with Kansas. If Peterson plays the full 30, 32 minutes out of 40 minutes, I don't see why Kansas can't make a Final Four run as well and be in that same conversation as a Michigan, Duke, Arizona.
What a crazy spectacle that has been, because you can see this team going from, getting spanked by Cincinnati, and then all of a sudden having a good Big Monday performance against Houston, who's lost now, I believe, 3 straight games. Is that right, or is it 4?
3 straight games.
Yeah, 3.
Syracuse Sports Talk shows on
Kansas is right there with them, even though they've had a very up-and-down season.
Broadcasting stars today, broadcasting live from the campus of Syracuse University. This is Newhouse Afternoon.
3:38 inside the SMC studios in Syracuse. This is Newhouse Afternoon. Joseph Duffy and Hunter Caparelli back for our C block. Going to talk a little bit about the Winter Olympics that just winded down, and we saw historic hockey being played by the United States. The first time that the men's and women's team won the gold medal. The United States with an overtime victory against Canada. The same for the women's team as well. I want to start with the men's hockey team as well. The first gold medal since the 1980 Miracle on Ice year. What a game that was. It's crazy it's already been 2 days, or it's only been 2 days in a way, because this game feels like it's been a long time ago in a way, like 3-4 days ago. But it was just this past Sunday, and what a barn burner it was.
I think if you're a fan of Syracuse sports, you might almost feel like you sold your soul this past weekend to get the USA men's gold medal. The fact that men's basketball, women's basketball, men's lacrosse, women's lacrosse all took losses, but the USA men's team took home the gold for the first time since 1980. It was like, oh, well, we gave up these 4 games in order to see history made, not just for Syracuse, but USA as a whole.
I mean,
what a game.
You see the great pictures that have come out from that victory. And, Hughes having the flag over his shoulder and then having his fist up and then the bloody teeth. It was
half his teeth.
Possibly the most American photo I've ever seen. The most American sports photo that you will ever see. Just pure, heart from this team, coached by Mike Sullivan of Pittsburgh. This team going undefeated in prelims and elimination rounds. Clearly, they had the defensive depth. You could argue, as you saw, Connor Hellebuck, the gully with 41, 42 saves, had a masterclass. Can call him the Secretary of Defense, if you will, for the United States hockey team against Canada. But wow, what a game well played and what a run for this team.
What a game. I'll give credit partly to the NHL for bringing that 4 Nations League All-Star format into their league last year. I thought that format brought back some intensity, some rivalry between the countries. We especially saw that in the 4 Nations League Championship last year between USA and Canada when Canada won. I think that almost seeped into this year's Winter Olympics with men's hockey. And that game, just the fact that Canada was dominating, it seemed like every period. As someone who doesn't watch much hockey, I could tell Canada is just getting shot after shot. Hellebuck was great in goal, but the fact that USA was able to weather all those shots, get it to an overtime, a 3-on-3 overtime where anything could happen, and that's exactly what did happen. The puck got into Canada's zone, USA had numbers, and Hughes was able to finish it.
And similar to you, I didn't grow up, the biggest hockey fan. I've really gotten into it the past 3 or 4-ish years. But, I mean, you see the amount of passion these guys play with. And different from the NFL and the NBA in a way, these guys are not paid as much, and they're just going full speed, and there's not many, times for a break. And they're on the ice for a few seconds, 40, 45 seconds. Some guys out there stretching to 2 minutes. But it doesn't feel like there's any dull moments as opposed to an NFL game or NBA game. Sometimes, you'll flip through on an NBA day and only watch the last 2 minutes, but it felt like you could not miss a single minute of United States action a few days ago.
You could not. It begs the question, it brings up, do you compare the way NHL players play versus NBA, for example? You see players in the NBA will miss 2 to 3 weeks with a bruised arm or a sprained ankle, and you got guys like Jack Hughes who lose half his teeth in the middle of the game and still end up scoring the game-winning goal. Obviously, hockey is played much differently than the NBA, and I'm a huge NBA fan, but just the integrity these guys have, play for your country, the pride, the patriotism, everything, particularly for me, it pulled me in right away.
In a way, I wish I could see that a little bit more with the World Baseball Classic.
Oh, 100%.
If the United States could go all in like these guys were rallying for in the NHL, I think it could make the tournament even better. And possibly there's rumors of they're bringing back Olympic baseball, similar to like how the WBC is being played, but more participation, because you see how much it matters to Canadians and Americans and those from Denmark and Finland and Germany. So many teams play hockey with so much passion in the NHL, and they want to play for their country. It means a lot to them, some of it more than the Stanley Cup itself.
Yeah, I love seeing the difference between people cheering for their own teams and their own states in a particular professional league, and then cheering for their country against other countries. Obviously, a country as a whole, there's many more fans cheering for that one particular team versus if you're cheering for a Rangers, a Sabres, an Islanders. So the fact that the entire country had unified that one Sunday morning at 8 a.m., which was an early start, but I think much of the country was happy to wake up for it. It was incredible.
Canada not scoring at that 5-3 was the story of the game for me, and not taking advantage of the 3-on-3 as well, because look, I mean, that team had, some heavy hitters.
From what I heard, they had 2 of the 3 best players in the NHL
they absolutely had
on the ice at that point.
And their head coach, John Cooper, not a fan of the 3-on-3.
Yeah.
A lot of coaches aren't, but I'm sure he wouldn't be saying that if they had
you'll
won the
say
game.
that after you've lost. Yeah, you wouldn't be saying that if they had won the overtime and won that gold medal.
Yeah, for sure. So, what a game it was, a 2-1 overtime victory. The United States over Canada in overtime. And Jack Hughes was the hero with the golden goal. New Jersey Devils' own Jack Hughes. Moving on to the women's hockey team, also won gold. And you saw it a few days earlier. And, Megan Keller, her game-winning goal, and quite possibly one of the most satisfying golden goals I've ever seen. What a move she made on the very end in transition. It was just so beautiful. And seeing how that team played as well with so much passion and fire, similar to the men's team, I mean, it all came together for these teams.
It all came together. That move, it would have had me falling on my knees. It was incredible. The women had dominated the entire tournament. They were put to the test in that final game. But just like the men did, they were able to pull it out and bring gold and bring it home to the U.S.
It was also against Canada that the United States would pull away that golden goal. And, you see what this means for the country for sure, and how people have rallied together. I encourage people not to be so, worried about what people are saying on the internet. Some may say there's a big divide and a culture war on the reaction of people rooting for the USA or not. I think most people in general have been, very into this and rooting 100%. For the United States and cheering for the red, white, and blue. I don't think it is as big of a divide as some people say. No. Twitter can make a lot of deceiving for a lot of people.
I completely agree. Twitter can definitely be a cesspool, as I like to put it. I think any American should be happy that the men and women took gold in Milan. I know there was some discussion after that the fact that the men were going to be going to the White House to be recognized and the women declined their invite. I think that's just strictly a team-by-team thing. You see professional teams will sometimes accept the invite and not accept the invite based on the party administration at the time. I mean, we don't have to get into politics. That's strictly a team thing, but just from an outside perspective, the fact that both teams took the gold in Milan, how can you not be happy?
I don't think everything has to be a culture war, and I think that's what, Twitter kind of encourages in a way, the talking points from either side of the aisle. I don't care what politics you support, but it seems like, this is a good moment for the country to be unified on. I really do think that most people enjoyed what they saw in Milan. But I got to say, before we close out this segment, Mike Tirico's close, a Newhouse alum, a legend in sports broadcasting, the voice of Sunday Night Football and basketball as well, but also the host of the Olympics. What a close that was, in honoring also Johnny Gaudreau, the man who was slain in that drunk driving accident, a former NHL player who could have played on that Olympic team as well. But his close and encapsulating what this hockey win on Sunday for the men's team and women's team meant for the nation was just perfect to me.
It was almost like the movie Miracle came to life with Mike Tirico's close. It seemed like out of a movie. It seemed storybook. It was awesome to see. If you haven't seen it, I would definitely look it up. It's incredible watch. And Tirico, obviously a Newhouse alum, he's very experienced. He just called the Super Bowl 2 weeks ago. It was incredible to hear him kind of just encapsulate the entire Winter Olympics.
The guy goes from calling the Super Bowl to going on the field as an on-game host or a host for the Olympics in Milan while at Levi Stadium. just an unreal talent.
I do not love sports.
Glad I got to shake his hand at the Glickman Awards a few months ago. I mean, that's just a memorable moment just to meet that guy and who I've seen on TV for so long. It was so perfect in how they broadcast the game. And also shout out Kenny Albert and Eddie Olczyk.
Oh, yeah.
You saw Eddie Olczyk kind of getting a little teary-eyed in a way on the call after that win for the United States.
Kenny Albert, a family friend, so loves hearing Kenny on the call. Kenny, I mean, so versatile. You hear him call NHL, NBA, MLB, NFL. I love hearing him on the call. The fact that I woke up that morning, I didn't know who was going to be calling the game, and I turned the TV on and hearing Kenny, it just brought me 10 times more into the game, hearing his voice, and that winning goal called off of Hughes was just, I was screaming in my room at 10 in the morning.
You got to love the goal song. Free Bird is the perfect goal song for the United States in men's and women's hockey. And so that'll close it for this segment in what was a historic hockey campaign for both teams. For the first time ever, United States men's and women's hockey take home both goals in men's and women's sports and on the ice. So that'll close it for this segment. When we come back, we'll wrap up this show on Newhouse Afternoon. Joseph Duffy and Hunter Caproli on Newhouse Afternoon. We'll be right back.
Awesome. So we'll probably have like when do we usually close it? 55?
55:20.
Oh, okay, so we'll have like 5 minutes. I think I broke my chair. Still streaming live on Twitch and YouTube. Oh, well, we got up a little bit.
They almost fell.
Yeah, I know. These chairs in the SMC and the Newhouse 3 building, they're a little rickety. Just trying to adjust it here. Still streaming live on Twitch and YouTube. If you have any questions for us, definitely get it in the chat. You could also call the number. Saw something come up on my Twitter feed this morning I wanted to potentially bring up as we close out the show, getting back into just Syracuse athletics as a whole. I saw someone bring up the fact that they didn't think a coaching change will make much difference for the men, just based on the fact that they are currently in the 3rd tier of NIL compared to other basketball programs. So the 3rd tier right now, according to this report, is the $2 to $4 million range, which for that group right now includes them, Georgia Tech, Wake Forest, and Pitt. That's the 3rd tier. The 1st tier, which they encapsulates $10 million to $14 million, North Carolina, Duke, Louisville. Tier 2, $5 to $9 million, Virginia, Miami, Clemson, NC State. So that practically puts Syracuse 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's behind 7 schools behind in NIL rankings. So it just begs the question, how competitive can they stay in the ACC if they're going to potentially stay in that 7, 8, 9 range of NIL compared to other programs?
I know the voice of Orange Women's basketball, Tim Leonard, is a fan of Josh Schertz as a replacement for Adrian Autry in the future. But as you were saying, how good could he be if, this team is not willing to open up the pockets for the NIL, and they have plenty of alums here in Syracuse. I wouldn't say they're exactly broke by any means compared to other programs. They have willing alumni who could be able to spend to bring this program back to prominence.
I heard Mike McAllister also bring up a name earlier today on the station, Bryan Hodgson from USF, who I hadn't heard of until he brought his name up. But apparently he's a Central New York guy, so even though he's not a part of the Syracuse family, he grew up in Central New York. That seems like it could potentially be a fit. It seems like he's found success with a South Florida team that will potentially be in the tournament this year. So that's an option. Obviously, there's going to be the heavy hitter names, especially if there's schools who particularly maybe didn't like their success or performance this year and want to go down a different route. I would have to do more of a deep dive, but I mean, you look at a team like Baylor maybe with a Scott Drew, who have kind of been struggling the past couple of years. If Baylor potentially want to part ways with him, would you try to bring in a heavy hitter name like that to really just resurrect a program who, I brought this up on our show today, that a team that hasn't made March Madness since COVID masks were required in basketball arenas. So you think about how long ago COVID was, it feels like an eternity ago.
Yep.
That's how long ago it was since Syracuse made March Madness 2021, 5 years ago.
It's a shame, as we were saying 3 weeks ago, this was a consensus top 10 team in the nation, back in his glory days of Jim Boeheim in the Big East, and even, making a Final Four trip in 2016. But it's been a while since that moment. And, this team is, I don't think, really too far from being back at that point. But, it does feel like it's still a few years away from being at that point.
I don't think it's coincidence that the same year that NAL completely changed the landscape of NCAA college sports happened right around when Coach Autry took over the program, and that was happened right around when the last time Syracuse made March Madness. And we look at those tier standings of NIL for schools in the ACC, it does beg the question, how competitive can Syracuse remain in the ACC? Should they potentially maybe even look at getting back in the Big East?
Indeed. We'll see what it means for Syracuse after this season concludes, but ACC tournament to look ahead for Syracuse men's basketball. Season's not over just yet. A few more conference games to go, and coming up, they'll be going against Wake Forest and the Demon Deacons.
Syracuse University. This is Newhouse Afternoon.
Closing up here on Newhouse Afternoon, just about a little bit over a minute to go on the show. Joseph Duffy and Hunter Caparelli starting off with men's basketball. Adrian Autry's team will go against Wake Forest later on this week and go against a really good scorer in Juke Harris.
Really good scorer. They're going to want to lock him down, especially with the way they locked down Boopie Miller and Day-Day Ames in their wins over SMU and Cal. This is definitely a bounce-back win. You've dropped your last two games against high-caliber teams in Duke and North Carolina. This is a Wake Forest team that you're above in the ACC standings, and it's definitely a team that you should be even on the road.
And on the other side, Hannah Hidalgo, the leading scorer for Notre Dame women's basketball. Syracuse will go to South Bend to face Notre Dame later on this week.
Big game down in Notre Dame Thursday night. This is definitely a reality check game, I think, for the women. You just dropped a game at NC State, who was really good, and I think this is definitely a big bounce-back game for Coach Jack. Hopefully they can get back in the win column right before the women's tournament, which starts actually a week earlier before the men's.
Hopefully it's a better week in Cuse athletics, because this past week put Cuse fans through the ringer. That'll do it for Newhouse Afternoon. Hunter Caparelli, Joseph Duffy here in the SMC studio saying so long in Newhouse Afternoon. Drive Time with Tim Leonard will be on in a few.
Did you miss Drive Time?